You can see the attendees on the other tab now.
Yeah, we've got 10 allegedly. It must be 5 waiting. I'm assuming it's the public group.
It's 6 panelists and 4 attendees that are.
Oh, okay. 6 panelists. There we go.
It was like that when we switched over, so I'm not sure about.
I should be able to. I don't know. Does that beg the question? How many town employees does it take to operate a Zoom camera?
Okay, we're live, folks.
Good.
So we'll get to the punchline at the end of the meeting.
Great. I agree.
All right, I want to welcome everybody to the Yarmouth Board of Selectmen meeting on February 9th, 2021. This is a regular meeting. We just finished up an executive session, and we'll have more to report on that later. I have to read this notice because this is a remote participation meeting. And the statement is as follows. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing a limitation on the number of people that may gather in one location, this meeting will be conducted via remote participation. Specific information such as instructions and guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or a requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.yarmouth.ma.us. For the public portion of the meeting, members of the public who wish to watch and listen or participate in the meeting may do so by following the instructions on the notice that has been posted and is now on the screen. So I'm going to call for, I believe I need to call for a roll call vote to go into regular session. Is that right, Bob?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. So roll call vote. Tracy Post.
Aye.
Mike Stone.
Aye.
Eric Tolley.
Excuse me, aye.
And the chair votes aye. And Selectman Horgan unfortunately can't be with us this evening. So before I begin with public comments, I'd like everybody to join us in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America.
and to the republic
Republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item is public comments. Do we have anybody seeking recognition? Okay, very good. The next item on the agenda is an update on the COVID situation in Yarmouth from our Health Director, Bruce Murphy. Mr. Murphy.
Yes.
You're being recognized.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
We just can't see you.
Okay. Is Pat putting me up, or you got my? Yeah. Some.
I think you have two. You have two. It looks like you have two. You're still in the attendees, but as the director of health. We can hear you though.
Okay. I do have some slides to go over to give the board and the public an update on where we sit with the coronavirus, and then I can talk about where we town and the state sits on vaccine. Pat has a little PowerPoint. If you want to start that, Pat, we can kind of go right through it. Not half as long as my last time here. I've kind of boiled it down to try to just look into the highlights.
Okay, we appreciate that.
Yeah, so we should be able to go right through this fairly quick. Where we sit with COVID cases as of today was 1,024, 41 active with still at 21 deaths, 28 deaths, excuse me. Go ahead. It's community spread based through the different villages we have, West Yarmouth, South Yarmouth, kind of based on the population. Okay. What we did is we also broke it down by age group. These charts are familiar for, I know the board has seen them, but just to let the public know, it's, you know, you can kind of see that it's still in that age group, the highest, 50 to 59, but pretty much all the other age groups between, you know, 20 to 69, they're all pretty close. So it is community spread and between ages. Okay. Male, female, you can see the breakdown a little bit more, almost, you know, 130 more in the female category. Okay. This one you've seen each time we've presented it from the early coronavirus pandemic outbreak in March, April, where then it went down during the summer, and then now you've really seen that second surge that was created even higher than where the original pandemic started, to where we were getting at one time we had 170 more cases that were active during the day, each day, but now we've seen it in the last week starting to drop off until which is helpful that we're going to monitor. And yesterday was the first date that we had no cases since November 14th. So hopefully.
Bruce, you just got muted. Oh, I see. Well, we still muted.
There we go. There we go. Oh, okay. I'm on all the way now.
Now we can see you.
There we go. So I think I left off at you. We can see the number of cases dropping off where we had 170 active cases in December, January, and then the last of January, February, we can see the cases dropping right off to yesterday. We had no cases at all reported to us from the state, and that's the first time since November 14th. So hopefully the state and the town is on a decrease in the surge. The deaths have remained at 28, as you can see by the month, with the age range 63 through 99, with a average of 86. Okay. How Yarmouth sits, where all the Cape Towns sit, this comes out every Friday, so this is based on last Friday from the week even before that. But Yarmouth was able to move down out of the red high risk category that we were in for 8 consecutive weeks, and we're now down to yellow with a lower percent positivity. During that time, we did have 138 positive cases, and over that last 2 weeks, we've tested over 3,000 people. A lot of them are also coming out of the nursing homes that the staff and residents are getting tested 2 to 3 times per week. So that's the good news is hopefully that's some of the good work we're doing within the health department, getting the message off about not social gatherings and sleepovers and so forth, and people paying more attention to wearing masks and so forth. So we're hoping that will continue. Thank you, Pat. Currently, based on today, the hospital rates at Cape Cod Hospital, you can see 16 beds, 7 in ICU. Falmouth, for a total in the hospitals on the Cape, 23, and 9 in ICU. So at this point, hopefully we're not straining the hospital system with a decrease in the surge. Where these cases are coming from, this is coming from basically in January reported to us from, these are the state numbers, where you can see the most of the cases are coming from household contacts. Contacts spreading through a family, people going over to a family, or members within a family. And you can see it's not coming from restaurants or the schools, but it's mainly coming from household contacts and family members. Thank you. Vaccine, this will be, I'll finish up with the slides here on vaccine. That's the question that we get every single day going through. We have pretty much finishing up phase 1. We're finishing up our first responders, the clinics I set up a month ago. The second shots for the first responders for police and fire will be this week and next week. We are ready to move into phase 2, which is 75 and older. Okay, Pat. You can see this chart goes from phase 1 down to the first step of phase 2 is 75 and older is the first group that we're working on. Thank you. Vaccination plans. How do we get this vaccine out? And I think this is the big one that we spend all our time on every day, talking to different people in conference calls. We're dependent on state vaccine allotment. There's nothing we can do at the county level or the town level unless the vaccine comes in. Right now, the county is ready to go and does go with different regional sites, but the county's only receiving 975 doses per week. So as you can see, there was 2 vaccination sites that were opening, scheduled, and I'll go into that in a minute. But we're relied on state vaccine. You know, we've talked to Senator Sia today, was in a conference call with the county health directors, and they're trying to get the more vaccine to the Cape. As we know, the Cape has the highest elderly population of any county in the state in a matter of getting the vaccine down here. It doesn't help when we hear there's extra vaccine or vaccine available off Cape at, you know, Gillette Stadium or Fenway or something. They need to work at getting it down here. They have talked about having one Massachusetts Cape vaccination site on the Cape, and you know we're still hopefully that will come, but that hasn't been finalized. Local pharmacy CVS on Station Ave is running clinics 7 days a week, and they're booking out pretty much 5 to 7 days in advance to keep that full. Stop and Shop also has some local pharmacies in Hyannis and pharmacies, in Hyannis. And we're working on how we can get our outreach to our homebound people, working with our nursing groups in our senior center that I've talked to Diane Kane up there on a regular basis. Thank you. How do we get out? How do we get a notice out to people? We also get that as if when we do be able to reach out to more people, or there's another sign up by the county, how do we reach out to people? We reach out through our town social media platforms that Pat's working now along with Kyle, the county helpline, the code red calls that I put out, the message board signs, channel 18, and we also know it's in the newspapers also. As we'll see next, the county had a, Pat, if you want to move on, the clinic that they had at the Melody Tent scheduled for registrations this morning. This went out this morning at 9. We did send it out yesterday when we found out about this through our social media platforms to our town residents, along with the senior center emails. So the Melody Tent and the Eastham went out. You can see there was 1,300 doses available in the Melody Tent, 375 for Eastham, and they were both sold out from 9 o'clock within about a half hour. So the difficulty was still people trying to get on the software to sign up. They still had difficulty on the state software. So that's something that the state knows, and we need to get that better to get out to all our age group. Okay. Our population in town, that, as you know, our age group over 75 is, 4,300 that we've got to reach out to. And that's just going to take a while. Even if we can get vaccine on the local level where they say they may be able to get us 100 doses from time to time, you can see how long it's going to take to reach out to that age 85 group of our town population. So we're very sensitive to that, and we're trying to work hard to try to get more vaccine from the state down here so we can reach out to that group. As you can also see on the next slide, the county population is 26,000 over age 75. So you can see if we're only getting 1,000 vaccine doses from the state, it's just not sufficient to get that age population. And really the concern is that they do have extra vaccine at Foxborough or other places offsite and they don't shift it down here, that the state doesn't say, okay, we're doing better off Cape and let's open it up to age 65. And we haven't even got over through age 75. So that's a concern that the health directors have made to Senator Sears today to make sure that goes up to make sure we get through phase 1 to reach our population that we need to. Vaccination clinics, that's up all the time. Immunizations.org. You can get up through any of the county sites to find out what's available. Also, on the next slide, we'll see the state operated a new 211 call where they'll have it staffed by at least 75 people so people can call in and try to make an appointment if they need assistance. So that was new over the weekend, and we did get that out through our social media, and all the senior centers did get that. And I'm going to end with my last slide, that the county vaccination helpline has been very helpful, and that is staffed Monday through Friday, and you can get a live person to assist you. They don't have any more word of when the vaccine's coming. I know that's the question is, when's the next clinic, and where's that going to be? And as soon as we know, we'll send that out. But like I said, it's only about 1,000, 1,400 cases per week that we're going to spread out across the Cape. We are trying to get our extra doses that we can reach out to our homebound, but we're going to continue trying that. So that's the overall general overview. We had a Board of Health meeting last night that we talked a lot more on, maybe in depth, that people can follow the Board of Health meetings. But that's the general update to the Board of Selectmen and the public watching.
Thanks, Bruce. I'm going to go around the board to see if members have a question or comment. Tracy?
Thanks, Bruce. It seems that we're trending in a good direction, finally.
Yes.
It's been you must be tired. I know you've done a lot of work for this. I think it's imperative that we push for a local site. I know that progress has been made. Having a phone number is extremely important for people that are over 75. Asking them to do it on a computer is ridiculous. But even still, a half hour's time, it's gone. It's just, we really need to lobby whoever we can to get them to get the vaccinations done here. And people can't drive to Gillette. Some people don't have the means to drive to Gillette, and I'm happy to hear that you're working with the shut-ins, because I think that is another extremely important thing. And I am too a little bit nervous if the state moves to the next phase without completing the first phase. And this is just shot 1. Where are we at with the closing the loop on the second shot for these people within the time frame? Are they getting 2 appointments at the same time?
I believe some are, but I'm not saying they all are. I don't want to commit to that. And it also depends on the what they deliver us for vaccine, whether it's we're not sure if it's the Pfizer or what we're going to get, and if that number is going to be consistent. So right now, we're all set with our first responders getting it. The county was able to carry the doses for us, so we do have the same on that. But as we go forward, that's something we have to watch closely. You're correct.
And now that we're in the yellow zone, I know the governor's looked at some restrictions relating to restaurants, and the numbers that you see clearly show that's something that should happen.
Yes.
How did the Board of Health have any conversation about town buildings or meetings?
No, the board hasn't discussed that yet. We obviously want to make sure that we're in that continuing in the yellow direction, that the surge is decreasing before we start looking at different town operations.
Okay, so whatever we can do to help in terms of lobbying and getting the word out.
We can talk a little bit about that at the end here. Any other questions, Tracy? Okay. Eric?
No question. Just again, thank you to Bruce and the Board of Health for all the hard work that they're doing.
Thank you. Mike Stone? Mike, you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry. I'd just like to extend my thanks to Bruce and the board as well. I know you're doing the best you can with the supply of vaccine, which is abysmal considering the problem that we have here on Cape Cod with our demographics. And also with the slides that you put up, the real high groups for infection are people in their 50s and 60s. So even after we get by with this 75 age group, when, as, and if that ever happens, these two, the 65 and then the 50s groups are critically important as well, too, to stop or to thwart off infection. What's surprising me a little bit, and I don't know who's responsible, whether it's the state or it's the feds or both, is that they don't seem to understand the critical level that we're at in terms of our senior population here in Cape Cod. I mean, when you have environmental issues, people look at environmentally sensitive areas in terms of assessing needs and saying, we should give priority here because there's a fragile environment. Well, kind of the same thing should be happening in terms of the allocation of vaccines here in the Cape. We don't meet the general demographic profile of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We're in a medically critical composition of senior citizens, and I don't want to get overly dismal about this, but this could cost lives. The delay in terms of getting this vaccine, and I think that whoever is responsible for the outflow of vaccine has to understand that, and it's got to be explained to them down and dirty that we have lives at stake here on Cape Cod, and if we don't get this vaccine here quickly.
Right. Anything else, Mike?
No, thank you.
With that, I'd just like to point out that statistics are showing from the CDC are showing that with all the doses that we're getting, only anywhere around 55% are getting out. And so where the other doses are, I have no idea. It seems to be a bit of a mystery, but it's kind of an abysmal track record in terms of distribution. What I'd like to do is ask the board if it would support a call to the governor. We can, through a letter by the board, calling on the governor to get more vaccine here to the Cape as soon as possible, and mentioning just how urgent and how serious the situation is from our perspective, and to also call on setting up a mass vaccination site here on the Cape to make a commitment right away, because that also brings with it additional vaccine and staff and resources to get people vaccinated. It would be like our own version of Fenway Park or Gillette Stadium, but here on Cape Cod, appropriately sized. And I echo all the comments from my fellow board members that this is a dire situation. Many of the people that we're talking about, 75 years and older, have a variety of health issues. I've heard from a ton of people, particularly have been battling cancer, have immune systems that are in trouble, and are at a very, very high risk. So, and I'm sure my fellow board members have heard from their share of constituents and others who are very, very concerned and very worried about the situation. So,
Mark, I wholeheartedly support whatever it takes, whether it's a letter or a call, or a letter and a call. However you draft it, I'd authorize or make a motion that we authorize you to draft that and send it on our behalf.
I appreciate that. I will get a draft for you first thing in the morning, and I'd be happy to make calls, not just one, but regular calls on behalf of the board, because this is just so urgent. So I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any more discussion on this? Hearing none. All those in favor, I have to do a roll call vote here. All those in favor say aye. Tracy Post?
Aye.
Mike Stone?
Aye.
Eric Tolley?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Bruce. Appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a budget presentation from our friends at Cape Cod Technical High School. Oh, and I'm assuming we've got. Okay, Bob, can he? Bob, can you hear that and unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Do you control that or do I? The PowerPoint. Do I control it?
At the moment, I'm controlling it, Bob.
Oh, hi, Pat.
Hi, Bob.
How are you? Very good.
See you.
Okay. I'll launch right in. Thank you for having me this evening. And I'd like to also, as a resident of Yarmouth, thank Bruce Murphy for all his work as well. His calls are always very, very informative in this tough time we're going through. So thank you, Bruce. I do want to thank Chris Greeley and Norm Michaud, who represent Yarmouth on our school committee. And I want to thank Selectman Eric Tolley and Nathan Ladley, who's on your finance committee, they both sit on our building committee, indispensable members of our building committee. So I thank them all. And I want to thank the finance committee, of which Norm sits on, along with our chairman, Anthony Tullio, and as you see, Mr. Bloomfield, Mr. Galazzi, and Mr. Heber from Barnstable. The work that I'm going to present, which is relatively brief, then I'd open it up to questions, is the work that started really in October and really starts in April with our business manager, Aaron Orcutt, to develop the FY22 budget in these relatively challenging times. So I'll launch right in. Enrollment for the town of Yarmouth is the big issue this year as I go through. After several years in the previous 2 or 3 years, and it shows better on another slide, but we're on an upswing for the town of Yarmouth enrollment of students from Yarmouth. And although we're excited about that, very excited about that, I know that it leads in this case this year to a swing in an assessment that must be difficult to see. There's an increase of 22 students, 10 to the whole district, but 22 in the town of Yarmouth, with a sizable decrease in our largest town of Barnstable in this particular year, which has even compounded the situation. Okay. So at one point, Barnstable accounted for over 30-something% of our enrollment. But as you see now, Yarmouth and Barnstable are close to neck and neck. Over the last couple of years, that has narrowed. By the way, that's more typical of our history than the last couple of, or 2 or 3 years ago, when Yarmouth did go down several years in a row. Once again, happy that students from Yarmouth are availing themselves of their vocational technical high school. But nonetheless, it has impacts on assessments. Okay. Yeah, and there's the history. You see, we had declined even in 16 and 17, I believe we had a decline, but then 18, 19, and 20, you saw declines in the town of Yarmouth's enrollment, and we're now on an upswing. I remember saying, "You're welcome." Now I'm saying, "I'm sorry." So it was back those days when I was saying, "You're welcome." And you see the trend is upward for the school. You all have heard, obviously know about our new facility, which is now online. We have 75% of our students in on any given day during this time period. I think is very laudable to my staff that's been able to accomplish that, and our teachers during this very trying time. But and we built that facility for 650 students, and we're heading that way. Probably in a year's time or two, we will be at what the building was built for. It can accommodate a few more students, but we're happy to say we're on an upswing in what I think is an important trend on the Cape of students availing themselves of vocational technical education. Okay, so that just a little history, and then what we're presenting this evening is that you'll see the history here. In FY16, we did ask for a little extra money to fund our feasibility study for the project, and that's what that 4.49, really that about 2% of that was. the feasibility money. It was $250,000 from all 12 towns at that time. But we've been under 2% almost every year. And last year because we had an increase in enrollment and some other increases in expenses, we did present a 2.76 budget. But then you may recall we revoted our budget in recognition of the tough times we had entered, and we revised our budget down to 1.34%, devoting a good amount of E&D to the FY21 budget. In 22, a 1.99 increase is from that original budget of 2.76 for a total of $15,812,000, which is an increase over that budget of $308,000. So, like many things that come from the state, they don't make it over the bridge very often, and the small amounts make it over the bridge. And state aid, even with the Student unquote Opportunity Act, which was supposed to be a influx of education money, it didn't make it to Cape Cod, except for maybe Barnstable got a decent increase in Chapter 70 aid this year. But primarily the money went to the cities. So our state aid is pretty flat. I think we took in about $18,000 more than FY21. So if you just turn to the next slide, it kind of graphically shows as the operating budget, I think, has gone up relatively modestly over the last several years. And this is just a trend every year. The red portion shows what state aid has done, obviously not keeping pace. And that puts the brunt of the costs on the towns in the form of assessments. This is just a history of that same chart. You see, go back to 2019, we were receiving about the same amount of money as we are receiving today, just about, as all other costs have gone up. So once again, state aid not keeping pace. You will see that we devoted a tremendous amount of money in local revenue to the FY21 budget. As I mentioned, primarily that was our excess and deficiency funds. And then this year we're devoting $465,000 in local revenue. 400 of that is from our E&D fund, and we're still in pretty good shape in E&D. And with the potential for some federal monies coming down, I think we can continue to put E&D funds into the budget to defray the cost of assessments for the next couple of years. Like, for example, with a 1.99 budget, assessments for this year are up 1.47 to the towns in total. Obviously, that doesn't apply to the Yarmouth assessment. What is the money used for? You know, we are in the people business. Most of this pie chart is benefits and salaries. The biggest number being our teacher salaries, 36%, and then you have retirement and insurance benefits. And when you incorporate all salaries and benefits, as you're mostly aware, it's about 76% of our total budget. I do want to say, if I could, and I don't have a slide on this, I don't believe we may have provided that to the Finance Committee, but we are making a sizable dent or try at lowering our OPEB obligation. You should be aware. We have almost $2 million in our OPEB trust right now through the Plymouth County OPEB Trust, which is a group of about 30 water districts, school districts, and towns who've pooled their resources for the purpose of saving money and hopefully earning some money on an OPEB trust. So we have a plan, if it comes to fruition, through our finance subcommittee that also helped develop this budget, to get rid of our unfunded liability in 28 years. And we also revisit that every 2 years to see that it's on track. And we did this about 2 or 3 years ago, and so far I'm happy to say we're ahead of schedule. Market gains have helped that, obviously. This slide you have up now is really just a chart value of the previous slide. Once again, a people business. And there is some dart throwing, to be quite frank, about the new building with regards to the cost of the building, because we haven't gone through a cycle. So we pretty much maintained our building associated costs as they were in FY21, and we're assessing that as we go. We do feel as though we'll save money in heating, but electricity, we're going to probably spend more because of the air exchanges and all the systems that are in a new school. So obviously our maintenance costs in the beginning will probably go down, but I'm learning that maintenance contracts take up a good amount of money too. So there may be some savings in future budgets as we learn more about the cost of running this new facility, which hopefully will be overall positive net gain. The building that has been built, although we're still working on some things, going through the punch list, and the fields and the exterior are still being worked on. We are still ahead of budget. We're below budget, I should say. And it's going to be a LEED silver building when all is said and done, with some solar panels on the roof right now, and hopefully we will look to expand that over time. So yeah, so the operating assessment for the town of Yarmouth this year is, the number you see there, 3.138, which is a sizable increase of $440,000, which I don't say lightly. But as I said, the overall assessments in this particular year are really only going up 1.47. There are some big swings, the biggest being a decrease for Barnstable, of which yours is pretty much the mirror image of this particular year. I think there's maybe one or two more slides, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, we do have the E&D. That's our certified, it's uncertified number as of June. However, we do see that going up, because in revising our budget last year, and what we did with our budget last year was to get it to a point where it was basically level funded from the town's point of view, meaning you paid us the same amount you did the previous year, although the budget was it was 1.34% higher. We did lower our forecast because, if you remember, when this all hit, right around the February timeframe, March timeframe, April timeframe, and we didn't know how bad it was going to be. So we forecasted getting less in state aid, and if that ultimately does not come to fruition, then we will have money to put into E&D, which will further help defray assessments in future years. So, because you saw some sizable contributions, but the E&D picture is still positive. And this is really the slide I was talking about previously. We have a strategy of starting with 150,000. This budget we're devoting 200, and we're going to go up $50,000 a year to 300,000. So 2 more times, and we're going to stay at 300,000 for, I believe it's somewhere about 15 years. And then if Barnstable County's retirement system were to become fully funded, because they're on a schedule themselves, and that's a relatively big if, but if it were to, we would start devoting more funds from that, what we currently devote to that unfunded liability, to increasing this over a 28-year period. We hope to I think it's in 2040-ish, the Barnstable County is slated to go. So we would just move those funds over to this effort and hopefully be done in 28 years. Obviously, a lot of moving parts with this, but it's really just to say that we know it's an important topic. It was certainly advantageous that we'd already undertaken this when we went out to bond on the new school, as we got a 3.3 interest rate for 20 years, which was a great collaborative effort of the towns to address how to finance the expense of building the new school. And I think there is one more. There's 2 more. So this is really just to show that we were at 3.32, but also it's a declining debt schedule, as you see. And then the next slide shows Yarmouth and the rest of the towns for this particular year. So that assessment, in addition to the operating assessment, is the total picture. I think that with the change in enrollment, I think you, because this right here, capital debt assessment is based on enrollment. So that does swing a little bit, even in a declining debt schedule, if your enrollment swings heavily. So I believe we have here, oh, that's putting them together. That's just putting the two numbers together. So with that, I would open it up to questions.
Okay, let me go around the board. Mike Stone.
Well, I don't have any questions per se. I want to say that, as usual, you made a thorough presentation. I think it's a balanced budget. I think you always stay within reasonable limits and try to be practical and have the other needs of the member towns in mind also when you put your budgets together. I'm glad to see that you're addressing the OPEB liability. And in terms of the cost shift, it's pretty obvious that Yarmouth and Barnstable this year are on a seesaw.
Yeah.
And their end is down and our end is up. And that's pretty much the tail of the tape.
Yeah.
But I appreciate, shall I say, your moderate approach on budgetary issues. It's much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
I'm going to go to Tracy Post next. Tracy?
Hi, Tracy.
We got to unmute you, Tracy.
Tracy, first of all, sorry for that email I sent you in the middle of the meeting. I put the wrong email in to get into this meeting. So I said, I can't get in. I can't get in.
I didn't even get it.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't help you. That was not intentional.
No, I figured it out.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
So what was your, I guess I'm just wondering what the basis of your, we talked a lot about expenses, but we didn't talk anything about income. What was the basis of your income projections? And I'm just curious too, like if you had any budget busters, like health insurance or any particular.
No, we really, so on the revenue side, I think it may say it, but there's 12 million of its assessments, right? So we forecast about 2.1 million in state aid and 505 in transportation, 505,000 in transportation. As far as budget busters, health insurance, as you know, came in nicely. It's really an effective zero with a holiday in the middle. I know it's 2.8 over the previous year, but they're going to give a holiday in the middle. So no, there really weren't any budget busters. And I really don't know how the state's going to treat transportation when all said and done, transportation reimbursement. First of all, because of funding. And second of all, we're running 2 bus schedules right now to get 75% of the kids in the building because we have all the technical students in, except when we have had to go to remote at certain times for the pandemic reasons, like after the holiday. But so we got 2 buses. So we've got almost a double bus budget going right now. Do we get reimbursed on all that is a question mark. So we may have a surplus there. We may have a deficit there on the 505 transportation reimbursement. We really don't know yet.
Did you get COVID funding, grant funding?
Of the recent round?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we got 2 rounds. This is the 3rd, and this is the biggest one we've received. So we're slated. It just got posted the other day for about 400,000. So, and that can be used over next fiscal year. It can be used now, but it can also be used over next and the following fiscal year, which we really haven't. We're going to be applying for that soon, seeing what expenses can we supplement with these funds, and then once again, if we're able to have surpluses in one, we can put the money into E&D, which then comes right back out in the next fiscal year, because we've devoted almost 1.1 million over the last 2 years from E&D, which is a high watermark for us because we're usually around 250, and we've kept E&D pretty stable. It's down a bit, but with the projections we've made in the 21 budget, and then this year, I think I think we're going to have some money that we can put back in, which come back out.
Okay. So one of the
Is that clear? Does that make sense?
I understood what you were saying.
Okay.
One of the things in the Dennis Yarmouth budget that they were talking about in their meeting last night is, the uncertainty in terms of the class sizes and the significant increase to instruction because, they have limited people in a classroom. That doesn't seem really to affect your budget significantly.
Well, you mean because of the students that have stayed home or not gone into school?
Well, they're trying, obviously, as I'm sure you are, to get everybody back into the classroom, but having the 10-to-1 ratio in a classroom is obviously you need more instruction if you have classes in addition to that. So I'm just wondering how you're structuring your class sizes.
So the way we were, as I said, so the vocational teachers are in every day with the kids because the kids are in, for 5 hours because we have a split schedule during this time. And then academically, the teachers will have about 50% of the class in front of them at any one time. And they have to develop an asynchronous lesson on the other day. So, you got the kids in front of you. At our school, we're not doing, you got half the kids in front of you, and then there's half watching a monitor. They're doing independent work in the other day. Because we felt for our kids, that doesn't work. And for our teachers, that doesn't work. That split, trying to teach to 2 different venues is pretty difficult. And online learning, quite frankly, is not working for our kids.
Right. No, I agree.
Technical programming, there's no way it works. But academically and across the state, across the nation, engagement is way down with regard to online learning. So as soon as we can get, and that's why we've gone to 75, we really can't go any further with the guidelines as they are, with the 6 feet distance and the amount of kids you can put on a bus. But as soon as we can get all our kids back in, the better.
Good. And I know a couple years ago when we started, when you started with the school building, you started a stabilization fund.
Yeah.
Is there, you still have funds in the stabilization or
there's 134,000 in there, Tracy. Really, that was, we had to raise $1 million to do the feasibility study. And most of that money is gone. There was a transfer in there. I can't remember how much at an end of one of our fiscal years by our finance sub. But there's 134 in there right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Eric?
Thank you, Bob.
Hi, Eric.
How are you?
Very good. Very good.
Comment, it's unfortunate that state aid doesn't know how to get across the canal, but maybe a couple of nice new bridges will help that.
That's right.
I don't suppose that's a problem that will ever be fixed, but
hopefully it goes downhill. It goes towards the cave.
You would think, right? There's only one thing that rolls downhill.
Yes.
A question about state aid, and I suspect I already know the answer to this, but is state aid taken off the top, or is it apportioned to member towns based on the percentage of enrollment?
So basically what we do is we take our budget. Yeah, it's taken off the top.
It is.
Taken off the top because, and then it's the balance of assessments. But then assessments are apportioned. That money that's left over are apportioned by the formula, and then also by enrollment.
Yeah, no, I suspected that was the answer, but I just thought I'd ask for fun. But
yep.
Other than that, I like you better when you're saying you're welcome rather than when you're saying sorry. So, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Sorry.
That's it's okay. Thank you.
That's great. Bob, one quick question. Any ideas as to why there's a bump in Yarmouth? Why those numbers are going up?
We have redoubled our efforts on admissions. I don't know if that's it. I think the building probably has something to do with it.
Yeah.
The excitement around a new facility. But we did take a guidance counselor when our enrollment was down in the 570s, and we said, your job is admissions. Your job is getting the word out. Your job is promoting this school to the students, to the 7th and 8th graders. So, and I think there's been an awakening on the technical education side, countrywide and statewide, that has helped as well. The cost of college education has also helped as well. I think it's a lot of different things coming together.
Mhm.
And so that's what I think the drop was. And in the Barnstable, I know it doesn't apply to you, but one of the things the Barnstable thing was, they had a senior class that was very large that went out the door, so there was an element of that too. And I think I want to say Yarmouth had a smaller class go out the door, and it was filled with ninth grade class that was pretty good size. So it was a double whammy there.
Got it. I'm glad to see that you're getting some COVID money.
Yeah.
How much overall has this cost you? Is there have a ballpark number in terms of what the hit has been to the district?
So I want to say we've received about 200,000 so far. We brought on another nurse. We probably had three to four janitorial staff come on board. Then there's all the PPE that we had to purchase. When it all started, we got all the PPE out of you remember in the beginning, the push was to get all the PPE to the hospital. So we delivered all our PPE that we had at our school to Cape Cod Hospital. But we've spent almost all of that 200. The 400 is going to help FY22 and 23, I should say, as well.
That's great. So in terms of your overall budget, in terms of the cost of complying, you've been sufficiently financed and
because
so that's not reflected in any kind of district assessment.
No.
Great.
It's just I would say that there are things that when you don't have everybody in the building, some costs do go down, and that helps. And then there's some maintenance things that we haven't had to do in this first year of being in a new facility. So where those budgets we've saved a little on the cushion, because we spent a lot of money on transportation on top of the stuff I've already mentioned.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I think that's good news. I just wish all the other school systems could sort of make the same report that their COVID costs are completely covered.
Yeah.
And, others are finding themselves in a very difficult spot.
Yeah, it's we try to be self-sufficient. The towns have always been very supportive of Cape Cod Tech, and we have one shot. We don't go back.
Oh, I understand.
We make do with what we've got, and we're very thankful for that. And I want to say thank you to the taxpayers again for funding our school. At some point, we'll have a grand opening. I don't know when it will be, but and love to have all of you there when that happens.
Yeah, once we get all the vaccines that we need.
Yes, yes. I want the vaccines to beat the state aid, but
Very good. Thank you very much for coming before us tonight. We very much appreciate your presentation. They're always well done and well received. So thank you for all the hard work that you put into this.
Thank you. And as Chris Greeley says, stay positive and test negative.
There you go. Very good. We'll use that.
Take care.
All right. We'll let you go, Bob. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is the Yarmouth Police Department budget presentation. So we're going to call up our chief and deputy chief. Welcome. Again.
Good evening again. How are you? Anything changed since the last time we spoke?
We're hanging in there.
You're on the right and Kevin's on the left.
Yes. Awesome.
There you go.
I assume Pat is gonna put on the presentation.
She's working on it right now.
No worry. Unfortunately, these types of things, we kind of read the PowerPoint, but I'll try to make it a little more. Okay, well, as you can see, that's our mission statement, and we really live by what that says right there, and you can see it, and I hope that you see it, the work we do within our community, that's what we stand for. It's written, our motto is written right on our cruisers, and we implore that our officers be committed and do community involvement and be professional, and it's my job to make sure that they are well equipped, well trained, and well staffed. Good, over the past year, our calls for service have been down somewhat for a number of reasons. Obviously, COVID-19, we've had restrictions keeping people. I think right now you can't be out past 9:30, pretty much. So a lot of the nighttime activity has come down to nothing, but that has shifted what we do. We have paid a lot more attention to taking care of our businesses that are closed, visiting them when they are open, to make sure we put an air of omnipresence for our community. And some of this doesn't even count for the different things we do all the time, giving out gift cards, doing the food boxes that we run around with, doing Secret Santa thing. There's a number of those things. So we stay quite involved. We've been challenged this year with the COVID-19, like everybody else. Highly sensitive though, because we are the PSAP for the town. So keeping our dispatches healthy was a main priority. Keeping it closed down, locked down, keeping them away from all of us at most times. But yet coming to work, doing their jobs, keeping the building sanitized and secure, changing how we run our shifts. Changing our staffing around to meet the needs so that we could keep people out of the building. We can only have so many people in the report room. It's impacted what we do. Getting our training done has become completely different. It's all online this year, which was a challenge. So there's a lot of those operational changes that have taken place. Mental health, whether it's COVID related or not, has been a real challenge. The work that our team does to try to de-escalate most situations, be proactive with those individuals that we know about. It's a lot of work. Our part-time mental health coordinator comes in 10 hours a week, and he's probably the busiest person here because everybody's waiting to see him when he comes in. So we're doing a lot of work on that. We've had some promotions and restructuring. We're in a good place. We're moving right along. We've had recruitment and retention challenges trying to keep people here. Unfortunately, we're losing an outstanding young officer to an off-Cape department. Really someone we cherish. I got a lot of them. And this is a great young man who has tremendous qualities. He's leaving. I couldn't do anything to keep him here because of his family situation. And recruiting people, you talk to any department around, it is tough with what we've been going through with the angst towards policing across the country. We've had to make a lot of changes, and it's not very attractive for a lot of people right now to come into this field. However, we have been managing to, get some good ones. Traffic complaints, that's a big item, and this summer was no different, particularly around the beaches, as you're well aware. And the big thing that goes kind of unnoticed and is really a niche that we're not really that good at. We have one person who is outstanding at it, but generally speaking, fraud and white collar crimes, very involved, a lot of high tech. It's hard to keep up on. Okay, taking a look at what our budget looks like, where we were, as you can see from FY 20 to 21, we actually went down somewhat. We had 50,000 cut out of our overtime, and we are not on track to keep that. It's a struggle with COVID and people in and out. It's been kind of like a hockey game, keeping people who've been exposed or with COVID off for 14 days or however long it takes, getting people in to replace them, moving all the parts around. It is a struggle, and when you cut 50,000 out of our overtime, as well as $60,000 loss in our drug investigation grant, that's 110,000 lost in our ability to do our job. And if you look at the projection for FY 22, if you look at that number, that is an inaccurate number for a couple of reasons. Number one, since that was put out, we would cut another 50,000 in our overtime to match last year's budget, so it'll be 50,000 less than that. Secondly, that does not include any labor relations agreement. As you're aware, I shouldn't say any of them. It doesn't supervisors and the patrol operations unions. So one has been settled, as you're well aware, with the supervisors, and then the patrol is coming up. Some of the changes, we did have a reduction in our budget for next year by retirements that have taken place, and that equated $48,000. I talked about the $50,000 OT cut, but that is not reflected in that number that you saw. Our expenses, we've been level funded, or if anything, minimal issues over the past 6, 7, 8 years. Uniforms for new hires, they're expensive. It's $4,500 an outfit an officer. Ammunition costs, I'm sure Charlie's well aware of that. It is scarce and expensive. It just keeps going up for a lot of different reasons that we explained to the finance committee about. We had some money in the budget for a couple of things. One was a shooting trailer, and as that we could have completed, as well as uniforms to kind of help us through that. But that got cut out of the budget because of the necessity to meet some of our reductions due to COVID. We also cut $120K out of our cruises. We did find some insurance money that helped us get up to that. We have worked a deal with the finance committee to get our tasers replaced on a 5-year plan. It says 3 years there, but it's over 5 years. But they had to do some challenging bidding to make that work. But we got it worked out thanks to Deputy Lennon and Ed Centio for helping us through that. Some of the challenges, COVID-19. It's our life. We're all in this together. But it continues in our operations to be a problem, whether it's court, whether it's how we book our prisoners, bail them out, hold them, getting exposed, and when we get involved in people that we have to take into custody many times, they are not cooperative, and we have to get up close and personal. So it creates a lot of issues. Our retirement's coming up in the next 18 months. We're looking at about 5 more retirements. We have some unfunded training mandates that will be coming along with police reform. I think we sent you some of the checklist of what we need to do to get ready for that. Some of it, there's a lot of big unknowns that are still yet to be decided on. We are working through that. And just remember, when we do all of this stuff, it's trying to keep our officers up with a good attitude to go out there and do their job. I am telling you, it is not easy to do that. It's not easy, but we're managing to get that done. Our expense budget has been limited. There were no frills that extra frills that we can go out and do, but we're trying to live within our means like everybody else. We talked about our labor relations agreements. We got more to do. I presented earlier to you where we're going with patrol. And one of the problems with our overtime, there was a decision made. It seems like overtime's a 4-letter word. But when we break it down, when you look at where it's spent, it's all right out there. It is not like we throw money around. We just plaster it. We're providing public safety, and there's a lot of reasons why things are done, like court. We don't make up that we have to go to court. We're subpoenaed to go to court. Our staffing, injuries, sicknesses, illnesses, off duty, on duty, they keep coming. Trying to keep the right amount of people out there to keep our officers feeling safe and be able to respond safely to calls. There's a lot of moving parts, but when the overtime portion doesn't keep up with the cost of living increases, in effect, you're reducing our ability to provide service to our community. And that hasn't been done well. Keeping our officers and staff well, and that is not just physically well. We're trying to do a good job with that. We're trying to keep them mentally well. please trust me in the fact that this is not an easy time. It's never been a really good time as far as officer wellness goes. We do our best. We've got actually are doing very well in the fact that we're addressing it, but we have this added complication of COVID and the angst towards it, and a lot of the unknowns that are coming out. We talked about the grant being reduced for narcotics investigation. It's gone. So, hit the next slide, please. Okay. Some of the recommendations, and I know this is going to fit into the whole puzzle within the town. I mean, we just heard a presentation that no problem. We got 400,000 needs to go down to Cape Tech. Just to pull that out of thin air. So if we're looking to get our expense budget increased to 25,000 to make it reasonable to provide the service, the necessity items that we need. We talked about this a couple of times over the past few years to create a account for new hire equipment and uniforms that could also be used for fire department because they often run into the same thing. Free cash is a good place to put it, but understand there are limitations on that. We need to increase our overtime funds to match contractual increases. Otherwise, in effect, you are reducing service, not you, it reduces services to the community, and it's having an impact. We're negotiating the shift schedule change, which is something that's been asked for the past 20 years. We're on the cusp of getting that done. We did it with the supervisors, and it's a lot of work. One big piece that it's underestimated how important this is our dispatches, our public safety dispatches being competitive with other communities. We are well behind most of the communities on that, and there's not a lot of them. There's not a lot of people who can be good public safety dispatchers. It is a tough job. It's much different than it used to be, and it's hard to keep them there because it is a demanding position. So it's something that needs to be addressed. And again, you know, that 4-letter word overtime, it is how we have to operate. And we need to get some relief to that. So at this time, if you have some questions, gladly the deputy and I will answer them. I'll try to.
Great. I'm going to start with Eric Colley. Eric, do you have any questions? Eric, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Chief, for the presentation. No real questions. I would just like to throw my support behind at least 2 of the Chief's recommendations. You know, I think, you know, given the circumstances we have found ourselves within, and you know, almost a year now, I don't think it's unreasonable to try to increase the expense budget by the 25,000 that's been requested. I don't know, you know, obviously we don't like to fund operating expenses from free cash, but I think that is not an unreasonable request, and I'd ask for others to support this, what I consider a modest budget increase, given all that the police department does for our community and the difficulties that they've been experiencing, you know, on an ongoing basis, but especially within the last 12 months because of COVID. I also like the idea of, you know, the creating an account, which we can do with free cash because it's not a recurring expense necessarily for equipment and uniforms. So, you know, I think that the other 4 bullet points on that slide are a little bit more involved, but I think at least the first 2 are things that we could do immediately to try to help alleviate some of the difficulties that the department's seeking or seeing these days. So those are my only comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Mike Stone.
I don't have any questions right now, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to thank the chief and deputy chief for their presentation.
Thank you. Tracy Post.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. You know, it's hard to pick one or two. All of them are important with the work that you folks do. It's just, you know, we're just starting our presentations, and you know, when we get to the end, we're going to have to see where we're at. And, you know, I think our board obviously has consistently supported public safety as a priority in terms of, you know, obviously, as it should be, as a priority for budgetary reasons. And, you know, I still feel that way. So I'd like to be able to support all the things on your list. It's just a matter of trying to figure out what we can do. We had set up a fund for kind of being able to front load new hires and line of duty expenses. Was that something that was utilized in this last fiscal year?
Okay.
And how are you with the line of duty? As far as I'm asking because I'm sure there's a direct correlation with the people that are out and your overtime budget.
Yeah, two things. There was one account that was set up for police and fire line of duty replacement costs. There wasn't anything set up for new hires. But we have in the past year been able to tap into a little bit of that money. I'm not sure if that account is still viable. I haven't seen it anywhere recently. Ed Santiago does a good job sending out some of the accounts, and I haven't seen it there. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. It just doesn't come to us and we see it. That is a help. That is a bit of a safety valve when we have injuries. So that is a good way to help with that, and something that, you know, in better times we'd like to see continued in the future. So,
well, I mean, there must have been expenses for COVID quarantines and so on and so forth in terms of overtime. That's similar. That would be line of duty if they were out, if they had contacts from, you know, exposure during work. I'm just wondering if there's funds in that account and whether or not we were able to utilize them for some of that, at least for in the current fiscal year, and, you know, what our plan is going forward with that.
if you want to answer that.
It's more to Ed, I think, but.
Tracy, we have used the COVID funds to the town to recoup some of the overtime that we've lost because officers were out because of exposure. Where we have not been able to recoup is we had one officer out with a shoulder injury. He went out in November, and we've had to cover him on overtime. And then we had another officer that went out in March and didn't come back for about 5 months, and that was not work related. So we, you know, between those, a rough estimate was about 125 hours of overtime that we incurred, and we can certainly get a figure together if that's something that we could submit forward, and see if there's an account that we could attach those figures to, which would help us.
Okay. Yeah, in terms of overtime, keeping up with our contractual obligations, I think that's something we need to plan for. Obviously, nobody planned for COVID and the reduction that we had to make. So it sounds, you know, this is not a great presentation from my perspective because of the reductions, but I think the public should also know that the reductions were probably made across the board as our revenues are down. So it's not like we're picking on the police department. But I know, like I said at the onset of my comments, our board has always been very supportive of public safety. So I'm sure we'll do the best we can to try to make you whole again, so to speak. So I don't have really specific questions. I just, I'd like to see all the pieces of all the budgets. And then we need to prioritize, you know, if there's any funds, how we utilize them. So thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Chief, just wanted to say thanks for the presentation. I know you and the deputy chief put a lot of work in this, and it's just a challenging environment that we're in, and you folks, I think, have done a good job in figuring out ways to tighten your belt and to help make things work. I'm also very appreciative of the police reform briefing that you included in the packet. I think this is a topic that we might want to revisit in terms of how it affects operations and the costs and the challenges that the department is facing in terms of compliance. So I'm looking forward to that discussion. But it was helpful to get this briefing. I appreciate that.
Can I just add a couple of more things, please? Just so you know that what we've already taken some actions just to try to help us limp through this year. We've reduced our supervision, the amount of supervision we are doing. That's not healthy for us. We cut the hours back to when we have two, so that more times you only have one supervisor working than we did 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
We've also made an assignment by detectives and our PAC officers that if there is shortages on patrol, we let them know in advance, and they have to cover those slots, and that takes away from their ability to do their job. And some of them, it's kind of frustrating because they might be doing a sexual assault interview and it's set up for tomorrow at 10 a.m. and they get the call, hey, you got to be on patrol. So they're trying to do it, either piecemeal or make some other arrangements or do something. So we are doing those things right now. We reduce our staffing on the midnight shift. We reduce our dispatch staffing a little bit to try to make it all work. And none of them are good things, but we are doing it. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah. I know Ed Centio had his hand up a moment ago and provided an answer to the panelists. I don't know if there's a need to expand on that or revisit that. Ed, if you feel that we still need to discuss it, please raise your hand again.
I've activated it.
Yeah, I'm getting an echo.
I see Ed's comments on here. It says PD overtime was covered by the CARE Act. Some of it has been. I'm not sure the totals. He would know better. And in the injury leave fund, it still exists. There is a total of, looks like 60,000 was used in there, 60,859. I don't know what the amount that was put in there. It might have been somewhere in the $100,000 range. I don't know in particular. Looks like 164,000 is left. So there's a big number in there.
That's what's happening.
We seem to be having an echo problem here.
I think Pat needs to mute her computer.
Okay.
Ed is saying the fund started at 225,000.
Got it. Okay. I'm not going to speak anymore since I have a feedback issue here. The Chief, I'm going to let you go. And
okay.
Thank you very much for your presentation tonight. And
Thank you.
We'll be talking soon. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Yarmouth Fire Department budget presentation. So can we get, I see we got Deputy Chief Sawyer and the Chief is up.
Oh, let me make him a panelist.
Okay, Chief, the floor is yours. We're just going to scroll down a little bit further here.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
And see you. You're good.
You can. Yep.
Yeah, Deputy Sawyer is hopefully on. He's not on video, but he should be hopefully on audio. There was an issue earlier, and he's not on for video.
Yeah, I'm here. Turn your volume up just a tad, Chief.
Okay, how's that now? Is it better?
A little bit better.
Okay.
Okay, what's yours?
I got a 911 coming in. Sorry for the background noise. I can't mute that speaker, unfortunately. So you see our mission statement. We are dedicated to community risk reduction through the application of prevention, education, and emergency services to the town of Yarmouth. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of our call volume. As you can see, between 19 and 20, we did have a reduced call volume. A lot of people didn't want to go to the hospital during the pandemic, so we saw a little bit of a reduction. Our actual number, it says 7,031 plus, because at the time we did an additional 9 runs, so our total for the year was 7,040 calls, emergency calls. March of 21, we'll start the final year of our SAFER grant. That was the 3-year for the 4 additional paramedics we got. So the feds will pay 35%. The town will be on the hook for the 65% this year. Deputy Sawyer acquired a couple of grants again. He's doing fantastic work on the grant front. We got an auto extrication equipment grant for $112,727. And we also got a COVID grant to help out for $159,000. And we had some challenges getting supplies, especially in the very beginning of the pandemic. They were very difficult to acquire. And then obviously, the personnel dealing with the pandemic. I want to say our members at our department, since this pandemic has begun, have done a phenomenal job. We've had a very low positive rate as far as our members go. Matter of fact, we had none until the week of Thanksgiving, and then we had a couple that tested positive. So that's pretty remarkable considering the size department we are as far as members, as well as the call volume these guys and girls do every day. Same with our dispatchers. They do a phenomenal job as well. Next slide, please. So here's the budget overview. As of December, we were at about 50%, so we were looking pretty good, on track. Very similar to the PD, we were reduced 50 in overtime, so I'm a little nervous about that as we get towards the end of the year. So we'd love to get that restored back if possible after everything shakes out. As Tracy said earlier, I know we still got to deal with the schools and the other departments as well. So hopefully we can find that 50 to restore it. That would be great. So next slide, please. So the increases in the budget are, due to the collective bargaining agreement and planned retirement for 2 employees, and the expense budget increase was 640. That's the CMed bill, which is the sheriff controls that, as you know, and he just arbitrarily goes up on his rates without us having any say on it, which is a little bit unfair, but it's not that big of an increase, so it could be worse, I guess, $640. And we'd like to get a little bit money of other expenses. We were looking to increase a little bit similar to the PD. We'd like to get a little more money in vehicle maintenance. The cost of repairs and maintenance of our fleet continues to go up, and it's becoming a challenge with only $75,000 to maintain and repair the entire stock of the fire department's fleet. We've oftentimes have had to not repair the reserve apparatus. We have an engine that's been out of service for over a year. It's a 1999. It's not due for replacement. Actually, the 1996 is due for replacement coming up. So we have to fix this truck, but I couldn't spend the money on that truck and not take care of the primary trucks. So that's a challenge, and we've been at 75,000 for years. And the cost of parts and labor for a heavy truck mechanic is just continues to go up. So the next slide is the challenges. So we had a couple of studies done. We have increased our staffing by 4 with that last SAFER grant. Both studies recommended a total of 16 new people over the course of time, which we would love to do. And speaking of the SAFER grant, now is probably the best time ever. I know finances aren't very good, but the feds are paying 100% of salaries and benefits for the next 3 years. There's no cost share to the town. So there's not a better time to add personnel. If we could add 4 more personnel, that would be huge for us. And again, we wouldn't be responsible for 3 years for the salaries and benefits for those individuals. This is kind of unprecedented that the feds are going to pay 100% of everything. So again, I understand finances are tough in town, and but I was hoping maybe we could consider that after everything shakes out toward the end of the season. The other thing is we'd like to move the dispatch to Station 3 and have a dispatch director. Currently, it's not in a protected building, and that's the biggest flaw of our buildings. We have Station 3, which is a hardened facility, and we have 4,000 square feet upstairs, wide open, ready to go. And we need to protect our dispatch. We really do. It's vulnerable in the building it's in. I'm in the flood zone, and I'm also a half masonry, half wood frame that's been added on to several times. We were very lucky that when the tornado went through, that we didn't lose the roof on this station. So I would hope that we could seriously consider that not in the not too future. The next bullet is supervision related. Currently, the captain shift commander rides the piece. He rides either the pumper, the ladder, or the second ambulance. He's often been called to make split-second decisions while he's driving the ambulance to the hospital with a patient and 2 paramedics in the back. We're at a point where it's critical that we need to get this captain to be a shift commander and put him in his own vehicle, so that way he can respond to incidents himself ahead of the apparatus and either upgrade or downgrade the responses. It'll make us more efficient as well. In order to do that, we need to increase the manpower to replace him on the piece. So that additional 4 members, if we could get them through the SAFER grant, we could start putting the captain in the car and run it the way he should be. So, several departments on Cape Cod that do less volume of calls than us have the captain in the car model, and so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Sandwich, Bourne, Falmouth, Centerville, Osterville, Hyannis all have the captain shift commander in the car, and it works very well for them. The other thing we were looking at down the road would be a training captain's position. Right now, the lieutenant EMS supervisor is the only training position we have. He is very overwhelmed just with EMS related issues, excuse me. And often the fire training gets lax because he's focusing so much on the COVID stuff and the members and the EMS resupplying the 5 ambulances and everything else he has to deal with. So we've identified that as a weakness on the fire side. Another fire prevention officer would be great to help with inspection and prevention, fire investigation. And I put fire department mechanic. I mean, we're at a point where it should be looked at. I know we've been outsourcing our mechanics for a long time here at the fire department, and the issue is getting things repaired timely. As I said, I've had a pumper out of service for over a year. That's more due to funding. But as far as waiting for the mobile mechanics to come here or we have to drive the apparatus either to a heavy truck place in Chatham to work on these, and they have to have the EVT certification, emergency vehicle certifications to work on our fire apparatus. So, with the size department we are and the fleet that we have, it just makes sense that we should be looking at a mechanic, maybe not this year, but hopefully in the future. I know the new DPW garage asked us how heavy our ladder truck was so they could plan on the lift that they purchased for the highway building. So they wanted to make sure they would be able to lift our apparatus, which I think is great. So, maybe down the road, we could take a serious look at that. We've been making the outsourcing work, but again, A lot of times I've had apparatus, with issues that I have to park them and wait for the mechanics to either come to our facility or drive them to the facility. So it's difficult. If I had an in-house mechanic, they could get right on it. Training budget, we have currently 100, but what's going to happen is if we have an overtime shortfall, I'm only planning on 50 of that 100 right now because I have to save some in case we're short by the end of the year. As things get better, we'd love to see it go to 150 just to do more with training. Next bullet, COVID and PPE expenses. That's something new that we're dealing with. Hopefully not for too much longer. I hope, once everyone gets vaccinated, and hopefully we won't have to do too much. The PPE expense is always going to be there. We look to increase protective clothing and EMS supplies. That's also an expense line that hasn't been changed in several years, and the cost of protective clothing and EMS supplies, that also is growing, and we've been level funded in that as well. Next slide, please. So here's some recommendations. We'd love to, as I said, with the SAFER grant being fully funded for the next 3 years, we'd love to increase 4 at a time. So this previous grant's going to be running out this year. You can have 2 SAFER grants running at the same time. So we'd love to see, the potential to add 4 personnel would be great. It's manageable. We'd like to see the move to dispatch to Station 3 and hopefully put that in the budget in the future. The captain in the car and the increased staffing positions. And then we're going to continue to go for grants as much as possible for the COVID. Next slide. That's it. I'll take any questions.
That's great. Thanks, Chief. We're going to start with Mike Stone and work the other way. Mike?
Thank you for your presentation, Chief and Deputy Chief Sawyer. In terms of your wish list, we'll call it, I say that tongue in cheek, your response to the challenges, what would be your first priority? Would it be increasing the staff, moving the dispatch, having the captain in the car? How do you rank your needs?
I would say increasing the staff is probably the highest priority, and that would help facilitate the captain in the car. So it's kind of a twofer there. If we could increase the staff by 4, then I can take the captain and put him in the car. And I think that would work out well for us.
And what would you do with the other 3 positions?
No. So there's 4 groups of guys. Okay. So by increasing the staff by 4, there would be 1 paramedic going to each shift, and that would free the captain up to go in the car. We have 4 shifts of guys.
So these 4 positions would be paramedic positions?
Yes, I'd have to take a look at our paramedic level right now. I think currently out of the 15-man shift, I believe we have 8 paramedics on a shift. So they could potentially be EMTs, and we do also have our call fire department, which is our farm system, which we have some EMTs there that are already trained, firefighter 1, 2. They still would have to go to the Mass Fire Academy, but certainly we would take a hard look at those individuals and offer them some positions as well, because we love to hire from within if we can from our farm system.
Okay, and you talked about moving dispatch to say Station 3 and have a director, a dispatch director. Tell me how that would function in terms of the director's position.
So the director would be in charge of everything related to dispatch. Currently, the deputy chief, among running operations of the fire department, he's got a lot of hats, as I do. If we could have the dispatch director would be responsible for like the EMD, emergency medical dispatch grants, and all the training and recertification requirements that have to do with dispatch, and anything dispatch related, that would relieve the deputy chief and myself of some of the duties that we have to do with dispatch. I think that would be really helpful. Also, the dispatch director would also be a dispatcher. So during the day, we would have 2 individuals And in the office at Station 1, it's a little tight there we have two consoles in there, but it's tight. So, the move to Station 3 would be great. And we have plenty of room for expansion. So if other communities decided down the road that they wanted to have Yarmouth dispatch for them, we'd have room to do it. Currently, in the configuration we're in right now at Station 1, it's too small. And it's in an unprotected building, which makes me very nervous, to be honest with you.
Now, you mentioned the opportunity with federal funds to increase the staff at 100% payment by the feds for 3 years. Do I assume correctly that in year 4, the town would be paying 100% for those positions?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Can we ask Tracy if she has any questions?
Hi, thank you. We did an analysis when we hired the last 4 in terms of the savings, and it actually turned out in our projections that if we hired more, the savings would come in overtime. Has that come to fruition? And have we done an analysis on the potential for additional, what that looks like?
Yeah, you're correct. So our overtime originally was 1.1 million. It's down to 872 currently, is what we've been reduced to right now, and that's with the 50 that was reduced to balance the budget as well. So we did shift some of the overtime savings, and we would do the same thing. That would offset some of the salaries for the new members. So I would say, yeah, adding the other 4 people, you're going to see a little bit of a reduction in overtime, and again, that would be shifted to offset the salaries.
So the one thing that wasn't, I think, covered is the training. Is that correct? What's the out-of-pocket expense for the town potentially?
For the training at the fire academy?
Yeah, I think that I'm trying to remember what it was the last time that we had to come up with still, even with the SAFER grant.
There's really not a lot of cost to the town. The fire academy in Bridgewater is free to Massachusetts fire departments. There is an issue with, we pay our members an additional $250 a week on top of their regular base salary, and that covers their traveling to Bridgewater and back. We have been lucky when they stayed in Stowe. We were able to house them in firehouses in Westboro, Marlboro, and Northboro, Upton. So that worked out well, and there was no cost to the town. Now with the COVID issue, no fire stations are going to allow outside people, which I don't blame them. I would do the same thing. We don't want outside members coming into our building as well. So, but now with the Bridgewater Fire Academy up and running, they are commuting to that facility. So the cost is not a lot. I mean, we have to buy fire gear anyway, and we have to pay them the $250 a week, and it's 10 weeks.
Okay. So out of the last 4 that we hired, how many are still with us? Because I know we're having an issue with some of them leaving to go to other departments after we've paid to train them.
Yeah.
How are we going to stop that from happening?
Well, it's, we're doing the best we can. I think, to be perfectly honest, the insurance 50-50 is what I hear the most from our members. When they leave to go to another department, especially a fire district like in Hyannis or Centerville, Osterville, their splits for insurance are in the high 80s to 90s. So they're either 85-15, 80-20, 90-10. That's very difficult to compete with. And I get it, it's health insurance is very expensive. And so that's been the biggest thing the members have said to me when they're doing their exit interview is basically, it's the pay and benefits the other departments are offering that, we can't offer that. Being a municipality, we can only offer what we can offer and what we can afford. And I explained that to the members, and it's hard to compete with the districts.
I understand that, and I agree, and I think it's just, we were fortunate to have the SAFER grant to get those new members on board. in terms of the overall department, Safer Grant aside, how many members are you down at this current time?
I have two. Okay, yeah.
And you have a line of duty?
There's one member currently out line of duty right now, but is scheduled to be back, I believe, around the 15th of February.
Okay.
So we're doing really well as far as the line of duties go, and I think the additional equipment, especially those electric lift stretchers, have been a huge help to limit some of the injuries here at the department.
Okay. Excellent. I think the additional members is something that we should consider in terms of adding different people and programs at this point in time. I think you'll see our budgets. This year might not be the right year for it, but perhaps we can look at getting some members on board at no cost and plan for something down the road. But I appreciate your presentation. I know that we have some work to do with your reductions. I'm just a little, I'd like to, after all this, kind of pull together a few things, because it seems like you only had a $50,000 reduction in your budget. Is that correct?
Yeah, I had a 50,000 in overtime that they reduced, the same as the police.
And what about other expense line items? Were there other reductions?
Yeah, actually, we were initially going to be given some extra money in vehicle maintenance, an extra 10,000 there. There was a total of 25,000 that was originally going to be added to the budget, but they all were taken away, obviously, to balance the budget.
Okay, so so you're level funded, basically.
Yes, level funded minus 50 in overtime.
Okay, all right, good.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy.
Eric, Colin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chief and Deputy, for putting these things together. Two comments, neither of which seem to ever want to go away. First is the question of dispatch. I think that when we last spoke of this, maybe 2 years ago now, perhaps even longer, the consensus of the board at that time was that, yes, we needed to do something with dispatch. And I think we even formed an unofficial subcommittee of the police chief and the fire chief to duke it out over where it was going to go. So, I think that that issue keeps coming up. It seems to have disappeared, but I think it's an issue that we need to revisit and have a genuine conversation about and come to some conclusion, because it's going to keep coming up. My second comment is the issue of the Safer Grant. As you all know, or most of you know, we wrestled with this for years. I think even being awarded the grant and then declining it on at least one and perhaps two occasions, because at the time we didn't feel that it made financial sense for us to have to assume the salaries once the grant ran out. And what it always came down to was, the fact that the additional hires were going to help put a serious dent in the overtime. And, from what I'm hearing, there's roughly $200,000 savings as a result, $200,000 savings in overtime as a result of the recently made hires. Is that close to being accurate, Chief?
Yes, yep. And that was shifted towards their salaries to help offset.
Right. So, I think that there again, that's another discussion that we kind of need to rekindle. And I suspect that, as in the past, the decision will be heavily influenced by what the numbers look like, and do the additional hires help to make a real dent in overtime. So those are my really only two comments. Issues that keep rearing their ugly head every couple of years or so, but I think both of which warrant some more discussion and more investigation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Mike, was there anything more that you wanted to say? Mike Stone, you set?
No, I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Very good. I can't add anything more to what my fellow board members have asked and raised, Chief. We live in incredibly interesting and challenging times right now. And, I think the sad thing was before COVID, the town was getting in a much stronger position financially.
Yes.
And I think we all had some degree of confidence that some of these challenges, we'd really have to make some headway. And I think we were all pretty discouraged when COVID hit, and then we started to have to make some changes in terms of town finances, in order to deal with what's ahead of us. I personally get frustrated when I hear members of Congress talking about there's no need for state and local help financially to deal with these difficult budget times, and keep hearing continued reports of the Congress failing to provide financial help to those of us in local government who are working hard to try to deal with this. So it's hopefully in any final relief package, we'll get some help, and I think that will provide. I think what I would say is it would give us more confidence to the extent that we have to take risks. I think that kind of financial support from the state and federal level can certainly make some of these tough decisions that are awaiting us a little bit easier. But it's really unfortunate because we're all aware of the challenges that are in front of you and in the town, particularly in terms of manpower. And I was kind of hoping that we might be able to take a dent by now, at least a stab at dealing with that problem by now. But unfortunately, given the climate that we're in, it's going to be difficult to do. So I don't know if you have any more final comments, Chief, but
yeah, one thing, if I may, Mr. Chairman. So the SAFER grant is a time-sensitive thing. That period is going to be opening. It is open, actually, I believe. Deputy, is it open right now?
Yes.
Okay, so it's kind of a time-sensitive thing. So I know it's difficult to make a decision without the rest of the departments, as well as the school and everything you got to deal with. But it is a time-sensitive thing, and Eric is right. We did successfully get the SAFER grant back in 08, 09 and had to decline it. We went and got it ahead of time, the prior chiefs and deputy back then. I was a captain back then, actually. And unfortunately, it didn't get supported, and we had to turn it down twice. So this time we were very fortunate and able to keep the 4 guys, and we would love to, again, try to do that again if we could. But it is a time-sensitive thing to get the application in and get awarded. Deputy, what's the deadline on the grant?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I know it's towards the end of February.
End of February.
Be awarded. Yeah, I believe it will be awarded late summer.
Okay.
Okay. Well, what I'd like to say is, why don't you just double check that information and get it to us, the town administrator?
Okay.
And Christy, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask in the effort of time, and I know staff is extremely busy trying to get ready for the budget, but if we could just potentially get those numbers to verify that, that we can transfer that money from overtime and cover not just the wages, but also the benefits that go along with those, just so we can be sure before we can actually make a decision on whether or not we can move forward with that. To have that information for the next meeting would be great.
Yeah, just to
clarify that, Bob. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
so we're going to need you, Chief,
it may take more than a week, though.
Yeah.
To do this, we may have to wait 2 meetings, because we meet next week, and we are going to meet again on the 16th, and then at the end of the month. So
yeah,
we'll have to see whether that can be pulled together. Sure.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the savings in overtime that it would generate would not cover fully the cost of the 4 members or the benefits. The savings isn't that high. The money that's saved, though, can be used to help offset the salaries. It's more of a shift, like we did last time, but it doesn't fully fund them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I think we're good. Thank you, Deputy Chief. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is a brief discussion regarding borrowing approvals for DPW garage, offices, and golf. So I'm going to ask Mr. Centio to join us. He's still with us. Ed?
He's there. He just needs to unmute. He's on now, sir.
All right, Ed. The floor is yours. Hello?
He's there and live, sir.
Ed, you're there. We just can't hear you.
Well, I don't know if Ed is muted permanently, but I think in summary,
I think he may be calling in on that other line.
Oh, okay.
Do you see that?
I do. I just put him alive.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Apologize. Very briefly, we were successfully able to issue bonds for both the DPW garage and the golf renovations. We got a great interest rate, 1.7% approximately for the DPW garage and 1% or 1.04% for the golf issue. And what we're hoping for you today to do is to make the motion at the bottom of the page to accept the terms and conditions of the bond offering. And we'll need to get 3 signatures this evening so that we can deliver these to our bond advisor.
Okay, I'm going to first ask if any board members have any questions about the memo and the request. Getting 3 signatures tonight is going to be a bit of a challenge. But let me just go around the board and ask, I'll start with Tracy on this one. Tracy, do you have any comments or questions about this memo?
Nope. The golf bond issue is for the remodeling. There's 1.68%, 1.68 million on that, Ed. And that's funded through the enterprise fund. Is that correct?
That is correct. The debt service will be funded by the enterprise fund. And that was for the Bayberry golf improvements as well as the restaurant, the small amount for restaurant improvements.
Okay. And is the 1629 the total for the DPW garage? That's the balance?
Actually, that's what we went out to bond for.
Mm-hmm.
We received an $825,000 premium, which is pretty unprecedented. So the balance will actually be 15 million approximately dollars.
Okay, and so you wrap these into one, even though one's out of an enterprise fund. That's fine.
They were 2 separate bond issues, as you'll note in the document below. They were different offerings, but we took advantage of doing one S&P rating as well as other types of things to reduce the cost of the borrowing. Okay. But there are 2 separate borrowings.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Mike?
I'm all set, thank you.
Eric?
All set, thank you.
I'll make a motion that we accept the terms and conditions of the attached document and authorize the clerk of the Board of Selectmen to sign the bond agreement on behalf of the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, is there any discussion?
Who's the clerk?
That's you, Tracy.
Oh, okay.
Get you coming over here afterwards.
I'm driving to see them.
Oh, you're going to go drive? Very good. I'm glad you get that worked out. Excellent. Okay. Roll call vote. Mike Stone.
Aye.
Tracy Post.
Aye.
Eric Tolley.
Aye.
And Mark Forrest votes aye. Carried.
Thank you, Ed.
Very good. Thanks, Ed.
Drive carefully, Ed.
You too.
And I have paperwork here, Ed.
Yes, I'm going to come down and get it to you and then drive it to Tracy and Eric.
Okay, very good. The next item on the agenda is the board and committee actions. We have before us what appears to be a brief agenda for the meeting on the February 16th. I think that's going to be expanded. I don't know, Bob, if you want to shed some light on some of the other items that we might need to address that evening.
Yes, sir. What I thought I'd like to do is to add, we have community service budget, but also possibly moving up the community development. I mean, if you're going to meet, you should try to make it worth your while. And we also have the reappointment of our finance director, which is important. That was missed, I guess, a month or so ago. We found that, and we need just to have a vote. Dan can do that. I sent him a memo copy to the board so you can understand what we're doing.
Do we need to post that on the agenda for the next meeting, or can we do that tonight?
Yes, it will. No, I think we need to post it. It's a chart. It's a bylaw. So I would feel more comfortable having it on the agenda.
It's a charter requirement, actually. I was going over it with Ed about a couple months ago, asking him because it was out of status, whether or not that affected his situation. He seemed not too worried about it. So, but I'm glad we're dealing with it.
He serves until he resigns or his successor is appointed. And I think it is a bylaw. The charter allows it to be done, and the bylaw sets the parameters, at least from my reading. And then on the 23rd, and also we may have the cable contract just update. We could do that next week. And then put on the 23rd, we do have a requirement under the charter to have the finance committee and capital budget recommendations. It's not the hearing, but it's the recommendations, and we can do that. And the CPC can also attend on the 23rd. And I'm also looking to expand or change some things on the 9th and possibly meet more often in March, depending on your schedules, because we have a lot of things to do, and we should try not to have the meetings go too late. Have them in bite-sized chunks rather than try to do all at once. So I'm going to recommend to the chair that we meet at least 3 times in March, maybe 4, because there are 5 Tuesdays. So sorry, but you may need to do that in order to get through all of the requirements that we have. But I will get that. I'm going to be meeting hopefully with the chair tomorrow, and we'll get a new schedule to you to see if that's acceptable.
That's great. Thanks, Bob. Anybody else?
Mark, just so you're aware, I will not be able to attend the February 23rd meeting, and the 16th is questionable as well, given school vacation week and hockey schedules and such. So 23rd is a definite no, 16th is a maybe. So I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Are there any agenda items that are high interest to you that we might want to?
I will not be attending on April 20th.
April 20th.
Correct.
Okay, thanks, Tracy.
And one of the issues I think that we need to address, and I sent you an email, Mark, was the Grays Beach parking and issue. And I know that we had advertised that we're selling stickers again, and we still have not addressed what we're going to do there. And every time we go to talk about it, then we find out we're too late for this year. And
no, I think it's an excellent point. I've talked to Bob about that already. Now that we have an interim town administrator, I think that we can begin loading up the agenda, and now we know what's going on with the town administrator. The situation is a little bit more stable now, so that we can sort of find the appropriate time to take those and a host of other things up. Bob, did you want to comment?
Well, one comment on that. We are having a meeting tomorrow afternoon with the recreation and others called by the recreation director to discuss, in fact, these specific items so that we can get a head start on those issues, which you don't want to have that, talking about that in May. You're absolutely right. So we are meeting tomorrow for the report to come up at one of the upcoming meetings.
Anybody else? Mike, do you have any comments with respect to the upcoming agendas?
No.
No? Okay, that's good. Any individual items? Eric? Tracy?
anything.
Mike? Okay, no individual items. The next item on the agenda is the town administrator's report.
I had one item on the consent agenda I'd ask you to do. I found in looking at material that the board had never designated McGregor and Legere as special counsel. They are the law firm that is dealing or helping us deal with the drive-in site. They've already done some very good work in putting in writing what we can and cannot do, which is the basis of material that I can make a recommendation to the board on how I think you may want to proceed. But we needed that first step. So I would ask if you would designate them as a special counsel.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Mike Stone.
Aye.
Tracy Post.
Were they procured? I mean, how did we pick this firm?
Maybe the chairman.
They're like the preeminent experts in Massachusetts in that field.
So, but
I didn't have anything to do with selecting them, but I know that they're at the very top level in environmental law.
and
You're correct. Unfortunately, I did not either, but I noticed that we needed to do this if you want to continue them.
Right, we needed to hire special counsel to gain far more clarity regarding the drive-in site and the Article 97 issues that had emerged during an initial review. So this is the law firm that specializes in Article 97 land management issues. And so he was secured by Dan, and he did ask me about them, and I gave them a very high recommendation because they provided outstanding service to me in another issue that I had dealt with regarding Article 97 lands. So, quite frankly,
it was procured properly, and I mean, do we have a cost of?
I don't know what the number was. Dan seemed to think that it fit within he went through a procurement process. What exactly that was, I don't know. All I know is he and I discussed it, and I gave them a very high recommendation. As Mike said, they're the preeminent Article 97 counsel handling matters like this.
But is it? I mean, are we talking $100,000?
Oh no, it's I mean, we can get you the number, but I think my understanding was a fairly modest amount of money comparatively.
I think the original amount was going to be in the $4,000 to $5,000 range, and there is going to be a second phase, and I've asked them to provide in writing the cost estimate. As you like to have things, in writing, so I know where we're going. So I am getting that, and I'll be forwarding that to the board once I receive it.
I'm going to abstain.
Eric Tolley.
I seconded the motion. Is that a question? Are you asking for my vote?
Yeah, we're just doing a roll call vote.
Oh, aye.
And chair votes aye. So 3 and 1 abstention. Okay, any other items? Bob?
I have no. The only other updates that we're doing, just to let we have the town administrator's budget is tomorrow night, but I'll be meeting with the finance committee on that. We are working on the memo and the contract for Bridgewater. I'm starting to look at that. Also, we're working on the drive-in site to make a recommendation, as I said, to the board on how you may wish to proceed in the upcoming season. That's why in your information packet, I was told by the director of the Chamber of Commerce that she did not believe you had received information from last November or December, letters from the Chamber. So I put them in your packet so at least you'd see them. Nothing you need to do about it at this point, but you need to see some of that material. No, that's about all I had tonight. Thank you.
Very good. Well, the next item is an adjournment. Is there a motion?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Mike Stone.
Aye.
Tracy Post.
Aye.
Eric Colley.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. It's unanimous. Meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everybody.